We are not in the pain Olympics. No one is leaving with a gold trophy at the end about who endured the most. So it's so important to validate that internal human experience. So everything you said is just so beautiful. And I also love the vulnerability at which you share your story, because that's not easy. And so I want to ask you, as you've started sharing and as you've taught others to be more resilient, are there points where it takes a toll on you being so vulnerable and so open?
Brene Brown shares this of rarely do we see wounds in the process of healing. And what she means by that is, and it's something that's really informed how I share in the world now. I share the things that I've had the opportunity to process and make sense of, and that feels safe and comfortable for me. It doesn't mean I won't tear up in an interview or I won't tear up in sharing something I've gone through. That's a natural part of thinking about the things we've lived through, survived through. Sometimes they can be tears of gratitude. Sometimes it can be like, oh, that there is a rawness still there. But what I've had to learn how to do is safely share my vulnerabilities. And so when I can talk about the childhood trauma and the upbringing that I've had and the strange dynamics in our household growing up, it's with knowing that I'm safely in my home at 32 years old with a loving and caring partner, having built a life that's informed by that trauma, but is not defined by that trauma. And so it enables me to know I can share this in order to support someone else in moving forward in their life, but it no longer defines me or has a hold on how I perceive myself and how I live my life. And in fact, my own family has given me this permission of sorts, the siblings involved, to share it in the ways that can most help others, because we all saw and experienced and witnessed the severity. And you can sometimes make beautiful things out of that kind of pain and trauma. However, I will say that it takes a lot of self-care, um, choosing the right venues in which to share these things. Not everyone deserves or is deserving of the fullness of our truth, vulnerability, pain, and trauma. We have to choose the right venues when we feel safe enough to share those things. So for me, it's been a learning process. When I was younger, I was not as discerning, and it definitely caused a lot more pain. But now I feel like mature enough, well-informed enough, safe enough. I trust myself enough to know when and where I am comfortable sharing my truths and these vulnerabilities from a scar versus a wound.
Hmm. You said something so beautiful, and you said informed by the trauma, not defined by the trauma. And I think that is such a beautiful takeaway. And at the end there, you also said something that I really want to touch on, which is not everyone deserves the fullness of your story and your vulnerability. And I think that's so important. And I was speaking to Les Brown, and he was speaking about the courage to walk away from relationships that don't serve us. And so you touched on it a little bit earlier too, which is, speaking to the wrong people about your pain because you wanted them to be there. When did that pattern begin to shift for you? And when did you realize that this is not a healthy way for me to be sharing of myself?
It can feel very enmeshed because sometimes the people that we as adults don't need to trust with our stories or decide to not trust with our stories are the people we might have been closest to. So this could be family, this could be our closest friends. So it can feel confusing. It was in my mid 20s and after my cancer diagnosis, so like 27, 28, when this really landed home for me. And part of it is when you're a 20 something going through cancer, it becomes abundantly clear to you who is supporting you and who isn't, who's ghosting you and who's around for the wrong reasons. And that allowed the line to be drawn in the sand for me quite distinctly. And it also enabled me to build the courage and strength to know how I deserve to be treated and how I don't deserve to be treated. And there would come instances where there would be interactions with people I love who were used to speaking to me in one way with a raised voice or with shame and belittlement. And in those conversations, I had to practice saying, people don't talk to me like this anymore. And so when you're ready to have a different type of conversation, let's start again. But for now, this conversation is over until you're ready to meet me in a different way. That takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength. I'm very proud of younger me for having the audacity, but not audacity, for having the ability to prioritize myself. And the relationships shift because you are setting a new boundary. You are setting new rules of engagement. You are determining a new way that you want your life to be lived. And at this point in my life, there are so few moments where I feel disrespected, where I feel someone is overstepping because of how well established those boundaries have become, those rules of engagement have become. And so it's practice, but I would say it was going through the trauma of my cancer diagnosis, being mistreated in my recovery, severely being gaslit by my co-founder, and then coming through that and realizing, you know what, I'm pretty awesome and I'm pretty proud of myself and I know who I am and what I deserve. And it's not that. And there comes a day when you can actually laugh at it, where you can say, how did I allow that to happen? And to move forward informed by knowing exactly what you deserve, because you deserve to be treated well. You deserve love and respect. We all do. This is a baseline. We've just been conditioned to believe the opposite. So we're reclaiming part of that. And I definitely had a huge reclamation journey with that.
You said to get the courage and strength. And I think that's the perfect, identification of when you're starting to form what I would call a new identity, because it was like, I am no longer this person, and therefore you are not going to treat me the way you treated this person. You have to change if you want to stay in my life, because these are the new rules of engagement. And, I always find the journey of transition so fascinating. And with you, it was this massive life change that happened where you shifted identity and you realized that, hey, I am powerful. I am awesome. I do great things in the world. I'm a good person and I don't deserve this kind of treatment. And I know when a lot of people come from tumultuous homes, that sense of identity, that sense of self-worth is always challenged. It's challenged by yourself, your thoughts, the way you interact with people. And so I want to know, as you were in that shift of identity, when did you feel like I've fully embodied this new identity?
Mm. I would say that it's in small moments. Like there wasn't a black and white day or like a one day where it all kind of hit. But it was in these collection of moments. I can remember the first conversation with a loved one where I drew that line in the sand. And I can remember it not even feeling scary, but just necessary. And so that was a very distinct moment of something fundamental has shifted and changed. And every day there's moments when I was walking with my father-in-law. We live, my husband and I, with my father-in-law, and we were walking in the back, and he grew up in an abusive household as well. And we were walking and it was so beautiful and peaceful. And he looks at me and he said, Coco, that's my nickname. Coco, we did it. And I was like, what do you mean, Pop? And he's like, we changed this for our generation. We changed this cycle for our generation. Because our one rule in this house is you do whatever the F you want. Like there's no one to police you. If you're not hurting anyone, we're okay. And everyone gets to live and be their full selves in this household. And that for me is a new identity, because that wasn't it. That 100% was not. I had to be everything, a box that was predetermined, pre-described for me. And to now have a life where it's fully on my terms is absolutely like the identity shift. So it's small moments every day. And that identity continues to evolve, because I still don't want to put myself in a box. There's still so much more for me to learn and grow and do. But that definitely, that walk in the back was a big moment for us, where it just solidified, like, yes, we've broken a lot of cycles and we've changed a lot of cycles in our lives together.